Okay, so welcome everybody. This is Stacks Governance Working Group call number 68 now. Thank you kindly everybody for making it, filing in so quickly. It's always beautiful to see you guys. Yeah, for folks that may be new to these sessions, thank you kindly for joining us first off. It's beautiful to have you. And we usually just start off with like kind of a stand-up format. We can break it as well sometimes, right? If folks have particularly long stand-ups or some interesting things to go through, or maybe we press for time or something like this. But we usually let folks share what they've been working on, currently, recent weeks and time that we've been here with each other. I usually forget to mention any blockers or whatnot. Yeah, this is usually the format we go into, and we can, if there's anything governance related or even slightly governance related, feel free to share, or even use the time to introduce yourself. I might ask yourself, Ali, or others to introduce themselves if they can. Feel free to just pass if you can't speak at the moment or what have you as well. But yeah, I can get started. I see Andre filed in. Welcome, Andre. Beautiful to have you. I apologize for missing the last session of City Coins, but I try to do some due diligence and keeping up with what's going on in the forum. There's been some beautiful proposals there that I've been trying to keep an eye on, and I guess kind of keep rethinking the ways to contribute to that forum and some of the ways that you guys are thinking about governance. And some of the work that we've been doing with Stacks Advocates has helped some of that thinking. Of course, we're continuing, now some usage of the tooling that we have for decision making. We've had a run without some of our clan roles, and a run with our clan roles now gearing up. And this is something that I think is particularly useful for bottom-up systems design and keeping things simple yet allowing for complexity at scale. And maybe we can get a little bit into that today. But in addition to more of that, discussion on those testings, we've been having folks come in consistently in these weeks and speaking on important things like code of conduct, particularly from Juliet, sparking some of these discussions about the legal importance of code of conduct when it comes to DAO-like structures. This is partially inspired by Primavera de Filippi's work, who we follow along with closely, deeply inspired by. And some of this in between space that Primavera is playing with some of her executional theory, some of her legal avatar language, right, which may speak to some of the work City Coins is doing too when it comes to bylaws and things like this. Maybe we can start connecting folks in that way as well. But this is something that's been interesting for us in the sense of oral constitutions or oral code of conducts or covenants, right? And how this can also speak to some of that in-between space, right? But also how it speaks to some of the legal precedents and jurisprudence that we see from our Longhouse or Indigenous Council connections, right, in our research, where there's this overlap between oral constitutions and legal treaties, right, agreed to by all settler colonists, right, through hundreds of years now, from the Dutch to the English, American. And this seems to be important, right, for precedents to look to and reference that we usually aren't exposed to when thinking of Web3 models, right, and how this can unlock some of the structures that we organize ourselves with, right. So this has been some very interesting discussions, that we've been speaking to in Advocates as of late, in addition to some direct dialogue that we had that helped catalyze the discussion even further and allowed us to elaborate on this. So, we'll be continuing to, do our first, usage of the tooling together in these clan designs, and we'll continue to use that tooling to actually engender some of this understanding, but also some coming together around some of the advantages of living oral constitutions being spoken to in your code of conducts or what have you. So I'll shut up now, and any blockers to this would be getting across time zones, or getting across scheduling gaps, right? When it comes to time zones, when bringing folks together and advocates across the globe. But hopefully the tooling has thought about this carefully and bringing folks together. But that's probably what will be going on in the next 2 weeks, in addition to trying to bring some of what we're thinking about concept-wise into some of the CityCoin dialogue as well, speak to bringing all of the things that are already being proposed together in some way, somehow, which I think has been spoken to in those meetings before, but there's continuing to be deeper and deeper layers added as I watch the forum. But yeah, I'll shut up now and pass it to whoever else would like to give a stand up.
Hey, I'll jump in here since you mentioned CityCoins. Thanks for that, Harold, and good to see everyone here. Quick background is that I'm one of the core contributors over at CityCoins, and I've been leading the CityCoins governance working group. And we continue to make progress. We meet once a week to really try to design a system of governance for the CityCoins ecosystem that really defines the organizational structure for how different entities within the ecosystem can work together and collaborate, and hopefully, better serve the needs of all of those participants and unlock the city's treasury wallet so that we can start putting those funds to use to further the ecosystem and support our mission of improving cities. And so, definitely welcome any experience from this group to help us determine, what are the most effective processes and bring some of, some of the research and design thinking that you all have been doing to work into CityCoins. So, we're sort of, it feels like we've been like really trying to, narrow our scope and refine our thinking. Over the next week or so, we'll probably, be moving to produce a CCIP, which is the equivalent of a SIP that formalizes this structure, and produce some of the actual binding documents for the community, such as a constitution or bylaws, and whichever else might be useful to actually sort of define that governance process. So, we've been doing a lot of due diligence into what's worked well in other projects, as well as some of the technical needs and how we can best support that on Stacks. So yeah, thanks for being thanks for having me here, and happy to learn more from this group.
Yeah, no, thank you kindly. Thank you kindly, Andre. It's been exciting to see some of the how careful folks have been with thinking of community input and things on the ground as well, and some of the more recent proposals, although they've been there in the proposals all along as well. So, but I see folks continuing to add layers to that particular angle of CityCoins, which is it's admirable to say the least. To see how those things are coming along, how they can come together.
Yeah, Harold, I don't know if you saw there was one posted this week on citizen assemblies and community onboarding, and this is actually a through line that we've seen from a couple of different proposals now. But the general gist is that basically by creating these assemblies, we'll have a mechanism in each city to sort of survey residents, ensure that their voices are being heard, on board, sort of like local businesses and things like that, and just really reflect that into the actual governance process. And there's some really smart people that have been contributing to these discussions, and so yeah, like you, Harold, I've been as being working on this, it's always interesting to see how these proposals are being crafted, and definitely want to find a way to incorporate this into the sort of like overall structure that we're thinking about.
Yeah, and that's one of the angles I've been looking at, especially I did see that particular assembly proposal, and it was dope to see how well thought out it was in terms of the different ways of gathering folks, right, in particular cities on the ground. And it reminded me of some of the conversations around dialogue in some of the more recent sessions, or sessions where folks were, going through presentations of some of the ways they were thinking about their models, and some of the feedback from Ryan and Patrick, when it comes to engendering engagement, or particularly, encouraging participation and creativity, or encouraging agency in the innovation, right, rather than just speaking from the sidelines, right, and speaking to how that can get choppy governance-wise or decision-making wise, but I think it also speaks to some of what we've been seeing with Turtle Wolf and Bear in terms of the non-prescriptiveness, right, that's possible, right, to speak to interdisciplined, but also non-disciplined hidden capital that may be possible to tap in these particular cities, right? We're speaking to these traits rather than particular skills, but that could lend itself to upskilling, for example, right? And so this is some of the angles that I've been observing, watching you guys flow. So maybe we can get into it a little bit at some point. But yeah, thank you kindly for the stand up, and we'll pass it along. I see Merrick's with us. Ali, maybe if it's possible, you can give us an introduction. Juliet, Oz, you guys are welcome. The floor is open.
I think I'll pass. I don't have much of a stand up for this 2-week block, but thank you. Unless there's something that I've done that I'm not thinking of right now, and you think I should talk about it, in that case, let me know. But I think this last 2-week blocks have been less. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no worries, Merrick. Yeah, leave the floor open. Oz, you have anything for us, or Juliet, a hero?
Yeah, I'll go ahead next. So last 2 weeks, we've been working on the Advocates Code of Conduct workflow. We've had some active issues which were defeated, but we are going to renew those active issues. There's been a lot of discussion in the community about the Code of Conduct workflow. Hero Gamer and I have been working on that together, and he's been doing a great job working with the community. And so we're excited to see how this flows over the next week or so. And so lots of things coming up on that vein. Let's see, I'll have my first draft out to the GovLab of the legal framework by next Friday. So excited to get that out and talk with you folks and let people take a look at that. And so that's pretty much what I'm focused on right now. Those 2 things.
Thank you, Carla. It's been exciting stuff in the advocate sessions, and seeing how the code of conduct has changed shape. As we continue our dialogue, right, with the Native Council. So yeah, a lot of learning together. But yeah, I'll leave the floor open. If there's anything else that folks would like to share.
Yeah, so I will go next. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
So hi everyone. I would say that I'm just a smart contract developer. I have been developing smart contracts on Clarity since February. I also have been a lead trainer at Stacks Pakistan, and I'm working with different startups. I have helped BlockTech to build their products on Clarity and Stacks blockchain. I also have helped AlexGo way past when I was qualified in Job Accelerator program 1.0. And then I was also qualified to help other startups like Amortize, DeFi Finance. I have 12 contracts for DeFi Finance, and I'm currently working on Amortize. So what Amortize does is basically the mission of Amortize is to you can borrow 5% of your equity in exchange for some amount of money equal to that amount of equity. So when the price of that Bitcoin rises, the amount of your, or the value of your equity also rises. So I have like developed their whole DAO and all the smart contracts. So this is just a little like introduction of myself. Thank you.
No, thank you kindly. It's a pleasure to have you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have as many technical folks as we can in these sessions. Get an eye on governance and see how clarity fits into some of these governance ideas or the toolings that we've been speaking to for some time now. But also just keep up to date with what's going on, right, and what's possible. So yeah, if anything sparks your interest in terms of projects that you see, or there's a point of contribution, right, from your angle, we'd love to have you in these sessions as much as possible. And beautiful to have you today. Thank you kindly for your time, your ears.
Pleasure's mine.
Yes. All right. Yeah, we can leave the floor open a little bit more, see if we make sure we don't miss folks. Then we can get into action items, I guess. All right, sweet sound of dead air. We can go to some of these discussions. I know have evolved a little bit over some time. I wasn't able to get to the call, but I was able to get the call over to Hero, which just in the nick of time, almost missed it. Getting the invite to it. Hero, did you want to share anything? I know it was much of an intro call, but I know it was pertaining to some of the SIP and reviews in the consideration advisory board work, right? Did you want to give us some insights from that call, if possible?
Do you mean the call from Jenny?
Yeah. I think she was trying to reignite some of the SIP work, right? I think some of this particular issue speaks to this. I know it speaks to a few things, but one of those things is there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it was a kickstart call. I would probably call it, and she just wanted to invite different community contributors or entities or whoever might be interested in helping to review the SIPs in the future to be on the panel of the CAPs. So it was kind of a recruiting kickoff kind of call. And from there, basically, Jenny gonna probably get in touch with the individual groups to help them kickstart each of the CAP groups. So that's what I'm getting, basically.
Yes. And actually, you're right. This is actually specific to the community board seat. I think we finally closed the one that mentioned the SIPs along with some of this stuff. But I know, Juliet, you you're the foremost expert on what's been happening in this board seat, and some of the ways of thinking about it have evolved, I guess, a little bit. We maybe we can get into discussion a little bit more here, right, in terms of maybe how some of the DAO tooling that we have now can speak to this, and how we can incorporate system design into it a little bit more. I don't know, has your thinking changed on this at all?
I think from the last meeting, so this is kind of has taken a lull as far as moving forward on having a community board member. So that being a person who is on the board of the Stacks Foundation and is from the community and selected by the community and obviously meets the requirements of the Stacks Foundation for a board member. So that's what we're talking about in a nutshell. We haven't had much discussion about moving that forward. I think there are many other issues we've been working on. I think I do like what you just raised right now. And if there are any thoughts about that, I'd like to hear with respect to using that DAO tooling, being able to bring community into this. So yeah, I myself haven't thought about, I've thought about it from the perspective of community and that being the greater ecosystem selecting representatives for themselves that may come together. And I know we've talked about this some. And then that group would then, you know, with the blessings and obviously contributions and buy-in from the greater community, would then perhaps select a board member from the community. So just some thoughts that things we've shared, we've dialogued about over the last, 6 months or so. And but I think at this point, until some action is taken, it's going to stay as it is. So if you're interested and you want to get started on talking about this, having a session or meeting about it, then we should come together and set that up.
Yeah. I think we've had some overlapping dialogue, at least in some of our discussions with Hero and maybe Hero and yourself as well, into maybe how some of this can go into some of the journeys work that we're doing, right? Or this community, this carved community support, carved paths for community support that we're trying to achieve with Journeys models, right? Really more of an informal, but a whole lot of community support guided path to grants and grants writing, which might address some of the compensation things that you mentioned about this in the past, Juliet, but also speak to also engendering, folks like Hero or other folks, to gather folks around, an entire team that makes up maybe a DAO of some kind that addresses this position in more than just an individual, from more than just one individual's angle. But I know some of the strains of thought that I remember vaguely from some of our discussions, but I don't know if that sparks anything for yourself, Hero, or anybody else here.
Yeah, I'll just jump in one last time and then let Hero take it over if he has some ideas. But exactly what you're saying, that it's not just one individual, that there is a group, and the Journeys ties into that. I know we talked about all these things, so just jumping on that, and I'll step out.
Yeah. But yeah, if there's nothing else on this, we can move along. Let's see here. All right. I know how you had broken this down a little bit more, and I know Jason maybe intended to get something written here for us, but you explained it to me, I think, pretty well the last time, right? There's some of the way, maybe some of the overlap here. I don't know if you want to elaborate more than we did last time, Haas or other folks who may have a good idea of what's going on with this, how it may apply to some of the things we're doing in advocates. It sounded like it may be applicable from the last time folks spoke to it, which there's a lot of things like this now coming about, right? Whether some of the updates we've gotten from Console, or even some of the conversations we've had with Mike, who's working with folks like Marvin. Can you speak to this at all, Haas, if you're available?
Yeah. So I think I laid out how DWork works. It's like a Trello board that pays people at the end with crypto. The issue, I think, was that is or the next step might be that we have like a treasury and the wish list. That the wish list would provide the tasks, and the specific treasury would specify like the pool of money that's going to be provided to that. So, but I don't think we're nearly there yet, because right now what fills that role is the advocates program.
No, thank you kindly, Haz. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we can get some elaboration, where the way Jojo was thinking about it. Maybe it came from some discussion with Jason as well. But yeah, I think they just mentioned that some of the thing that you did, which is it's something for down the line, potentially. But yes, I know this is some work from Jason. Just open for people to give some ideas on themes if folks would like when it comes to some of our repo, which Jason has been very kind to keep up over the years now. We spoke to this a little bit earlier accidentally, so thank you kindly, Hero, for some of that. I guess refreshing of some of this work after some time from Jenny, getting back to it now. So, maybe we can give an update here, maybe another point of access. I don't know if we'll speak to that anymore. This is code of conduct work that we spoke to as well a little bit, I guess, today. Juliet, I don't know if you want to speak to this anymore or make some distinctions between the code of conducts. But
yeah, I'll just jump in. This is for the overall Stacks ecosystem code of conduct, of which the SIP is ongoing as far as a draft. It hasn't been loaded up to the Stacks GitHub yet, but I'll get that done pretty quickly here, in addition with the other work that I'm doing. So generally, this was the initial request for comment. It's still open for comment regarding the Stacks code of conduct. The SIP that we're creating is for the formalization of the Stacks code of conduct. And so that's the next step.
Yeah. Maybe this is a point of a time to speak to some of the discussions we've been having in advocates as well, around living code of conducts, right? I think some of the first discussion of it was actually from Haj, right? Referring to the code of conduct that we got done for advocates. And, we had some good support from, folks beyond just ourselves at the GovLab. Haj really pointed to the need for iteration and inclusion of even more voices more broadly from the advocates, which is always the intention, right? With, putting something on GitHub and hoping for iteration of some kind. But some of our discussions as of late have, started to look at this even, deeper, right? Not just using some of the tooling to engender real-time coming together around code of conduct contributions. But it's like what was discussed a little bit earlier, some of the discussion from Juliet as relates to the importance of code of conducts made us think about it a little bit more, and dialogue with Native Council that's at the heart of our research made us think about it a little bit more as well, where there's oral recitations built into the protocols of the social organization of the Ginyaga-Haga, right, or the so-called Mohawk or Iroquois. And so the importance of this being built in for millennia is the oral constitution being flexible through generations and circumstances, place, because it's not just the recitation of the wampums or laws, right, that make up the living constitution. It's also the reciprocity between the collective, right, that maybe leads to new realizations about these laws that have been wampums that have been passed down for millennia, right, and evolves it to interpretations of that time circumstance or understandings of what's the best for the collective, right? And so this becomes important, right? Whether it's conflict resolution, things that come up, or decision-making things that come up, to be able to point to not just the black and white written, constitutions of code of conducts or covenants, but to be able to legally point to this oral living constitution that includes the collective oral input, right? And so this is something that is actually a pattern through indigenous constitutions, right? Whether this hemisphere or others, oral constitutions and some of the structural advantages to it, right? When you're not restricting yourself to what are ultimately just memories of that oral process, right? And so these are some of the concepts that we'll be trying to get across to other advocates when considering how to really design for a code of conduct being looked at a little bit differently than the way terms of services are looked at, right? In terms of just, very, glanced over, so to speak, when coming into DAO-like structures. When they do play such a critical role in legal frameworks, as we're learning from folks like Primavera de Filippi and discussions with Juliet. But yeah, I'll open that up for discussion if there is any. But yeah, I figured it may be an opportunity.
I'll just say maybe since like we're working on the living code of conduct in Stacks Advocate, and I never actually look at this Stacks code of conduct, maybe I'll take a look at this if that helps. I never actually read it, so maybe that'll help both here and Stacks and Stacks Advocates.
Yes, of course. Thank you kindly, Hero. Yeah, I know, Juliet, would much appreciate it. Spending some time on this, as we all would, right? But yeah, we'll continue if there's nothing else on this. Thank you kindly, Hero. But yeah, there's a little update for folks here when it comes to how we're thinking about journeys. It's very much a combination of what folks might think of as a grants program model or bounties model, but also decision-making tooling for folks that are gathering into what could be DAOs or folks focused on particular projects, right? We have a little bit of updates to the diagramming there, but we'll be working on, Hero, myself, and others around some outward-facing language, right, for some of this tooling, and also, hopefully some nice diagrams that can show folks what we're up to as well. So yeah, I don't know if there's any questions around what we've been up to there, or any other additions from folks of how we've been thinking about journeys. I know some things that are not present on this current spec are even further integration of the clan design that we have been learning together. These basic functions of the traits, like facilitation, keeping a particular issue alive, making sure that it aligns with community core values that are there in Turtle Wolf and Bear. Also speak to a lot of what we think could be sustainability efforts, scalability efforts in this particular model. So we'll be continuing to integrate some of that design from some of our discussions over this week, especially folks getting a little bit more detailed on how this can look. So yeah, that's some updates there. If there's any other contributions from folks, we'll leave the floor open. And for folks who don't, who may be a little bit more unfamiliar with what has been going on for some time now in this particular thread, has been some following of what is the MetaGov research group and PolicyKit tooling that we're using in a lot of this models from Haz's dedicated work here. Hacking away at PolicyKit, which allows us to wrap around things like Discord and achieve much more expressive moderation capacities, but also, Haz has started to build in clarity communications right into Discord, which is like a couple steps in terms of web pages for signing the contracts or what have you, and transactions. But this is ultimately what makes up capacities for DAO creation, transferring of funding and things like this, right through bot commands into Discord. So there's some, a little bit of documentation here for folks to follow when it comes to this. but yes, we'll move on. We have discussion items possibly. How's it? You mentioned you were just listening in. I know, we discussed this a little bit before in terms of getting some more outward facing movement for advocates, seeing that we have some of this tooling in place that can protect us from any choppiness. So yeah, let me know if you want to speak to this at all, Haz. I know myself and Hero can speak to this a little bit in terms of some efforts that we plan, in terms of what could help some of these outward facing efforts, whether it's education or just walking through folks through what is otherwise just a chat interface, right? And some of the things that Consul could potentially resolve for us as well. So we've had a couple of advocates point to, some excitement in seeing that come along in the updates. And, it's something that we see in kernel research fellowship as well, where, it can be really overwhelming to just have a chat interface to navigate an entire community and all the different flows within a community, the happenings. And so, to create some horizontality in events and access, right? It's nice to have something that supplements the chat interface. So we're thinking about that in terms of Notion or web pages as a solution to, take some of this outward facing stuff seriously when it comes to education of what's going on in the system design, but also just walking folks through the flows. So yeah, I don't know if there's anybody else who wants to speak to this. Haz, Hero.
Harold, I think this work requires definitely a lot of planning and coordination. But I think like if there is like some work on education, for example, that would definitely help. But on the other side, there's definitely like an opportunity for coordination with the foundation. I think this might happen through Jenny. Jenny's been thinking about this, I think, for a while. And besides like the resources of the foundation for to promote something like this, it would also like open a conversation of, do we need to increase the amount stacked as well, and what are like the requirements for that? Of course, we don't want to have the current structure of the advocacy program prevents scams or scams from happening, because people could just like call other people out if their contributions are not actually honest contributions. But at a scale, the operations for that might be weird. Growing slowly have helped ingrain these values of honesty and collaboration and community and cooperation. Having to ingrain that culture, I think, is part of the education. And from the other side, I think from the foundation, I think what we need is some guarantees so that if the amount stacked is increased, for example, we actually, or if we propose to increase the amount that is stacked, we can actually prove that this is all going to the value creators in the Stacks ecosystem. And of course, this might like change dramatically if we go with a different model where most of the treasury goes to consistent work through journeys or community grants. So it's all open for change, but I think the most important thing is the culture. If either path we take, I think the culture is what's important.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's going to be a hell of a lot of coordination in communicating, especially some of the deeper concepts we started to learn together as advocates, but also, engendering that some of the paradigm shifts away from competition or scarcity that are really a part of a lot of DAO structures, right? And so, like you said, a lot of that is cultural and can be achieved through some education efforts if we think of some of that design formatting seriously. And myself and Hiro have been speaking on getting together on it for a while. Some other advocates as well, I think, are passionate about doing the due diligence in this way. And so, maybe we'll use this as a place to update folks on some of those discussions as well. So thank you kindly, Haas, on reframing a lot of that for us.
So I guess it's a little bit like, to sum up, it's a little bit like quantity versus quality, right? Do you want to scale a lot very quickly, but at a trade-off of potentially not having quality, or do you want to be of higher quality but slower? So it seems to me like the conversation is about this, but open to all the best way forward. Like everybody can voice their opinion maybe about how this could be taken forward in the right balance, with the right balance. Does it sound about right? Or
Yeah, for sure. I think some of your contributions, Hiro, in those advocates discussion, was really done a whole lot to reframe the mapping of things, right? When it comes to the definition of community, and I think that's one of the fundamental things to think about when thinking about healthy growth, and being able to track, right, no matter what speed the growth is going at, what's going on in that mapping, right? Because in that mapping there can be and there should be welcomed, right, varying degrees and learning curves, right, coming into this space, obviously for the folks that are new versus the folks that have been core community contributors for a while, and of course big waves, right, in bull markets or what have you, or other launches, right, can potentially interfere with core values, right, if there's not design for that mapping thought of carefully. And this is something that's interesting in terms of the overlaps with the indigenous modes as well, right? How do you achieve authentic openness and inclusion without compromising some of those things by being too open, right? But in this case, right, of growth and intentional growth, which I think is the case for a lot of indigenous modes as well, right? Adding to resiliency, adding to diversity is a good thing. And so, I'm excited to see how we can come together around achieving some of these things. I think they lend themselves to one another, right? Not being scared of growth in some ways, right? When it comes to that type of mapping and, the mechanisms of the clan system that we have for protecting any choppiness with big spikes in growth or what have you, right? So this will be exciting to come together on. Thank you kindly, Hiro, Oz. Yeah, and it's exciting to hear some, what could come from a foundation angle as well, Haas. Thank you kindly for that. And some of these other things, I think we discussed pretty well because Jude getting some good discussion here for us around some of this question. We actually did get this back to the person who initiated this, and I think they appreciated it. So thank you kindly, Jude, for getting into the the weeds of that. I think relieving a lot of concerns from us non-technical folks. So yeah, I'll move on from there unless there's anything you want to touch on. This is another thing that we would need Philip here, I think, to get some more elaboration, unless there's anything on folks' minds when it comes to community, funding. I think that there's a lot of overlap with the tooling here that we've discussed so far when it comes to community grants. This could potentially be a lot of quality community members that Philip has in mind. And, we can, show some tangible, community paths for folks to feel secure in. But we'll have to get Philip exposed to some of what's possible there and get some of his dialogue. He's usually in the airport when I try to reach out to him for these sessions. So maybe we'll have to have some asynchronous dialogue and bring it into here. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else has anything to say on this. I know it's quite a blurb there. Let's see. We have a governance lab initiative, which, for the majority of the session, we've been speaking on governance lab efforts. Maybe this issue can be closed out now. Myself, Haas, Juliet, Hero in a lot of ways, Merrick, part of that Gov lab. And bounties is really, I think, turned into what we're thinking of journeys. So folks can look at the spec mentioned earlier for this. There's just some meeting notes cleanup here. We do have some reoccurring dialogue with the Longhouse, which is a big part of what this TRW is referenced to, Tura Wampum dialogue. This is specific to a lot of digital fabrication efforts that we've had on mind for some time now. I think this relates a lot to CityCoins, actually, when it comes to bringing everyday folks off of the sidelines into the innovation, and making for a better decision-making atmosphere potentially. What Patrick and folks were speaking to in some of the CityCoin sessions. A lot of what we'll be focusing on here is merging indigenous modes of production, fabrication, distribution with some of the most cutting edge digital fabrication tools, right? From laser cutters to the more familiar 3D printers, but there's vinyl cutters and shopbots, whole other hosts of tools that a lot of folks aren't familiar with unless there's a whole lot of investment going into your country around some of these things. And we want to bring some of this accessibility into the Web3 space. It's a beautiful way of merging, blockchain-based technologies with what could be, deemed transitional jobs on the ground or deemed, important upskilling education opportunities on the ground for cities across backgrounds, education groups and whatnot. And so, I think there will be some updates on this soon when it comes to the things that we're trying to achieve with material archiving and small prototypes that show how blockchain-based systems can be combined with some of these digital fabrication efforts, sustainable development goals efforts, right, from the UN are mentioned, but brought into indigenous context with some of our work. And we'll have something soon as it relates to governance and the data flowing through what are those systems prototypes, right? But yeah, that's a little bit of a summary for folks who aren't familiar with what's going on there. And we have some fireside chat series mentioned here. We have some dialogue that I mentioned earlier with the Longhouse, which is the Indigenous Council. It happens pretty frequently now with advocates, thanks to folks like Merrick and Hero asking for these sessions. We can expand these sessions beyond the Longhouse as well to include folks in some of the other things that we're doing with the Data Research Group, who works closely with Primavera de Filippi, pioneers in the NFT space and so much and so forth. But for now, we should probably be updating folks on some of the links. I know Merrick has shared with advocates some of the dialogues with the Longhouse, but these are very much fireside chat-like atmospheres, so maybe we can include that here. And we have another one coming up, Hero. Just learned this yesterday. And it'll be a two-part series answering your question, Hero, around getting a little bit more familiar with the oral constitution of the Ginyaga Haga, right? And so we're already on the schedule for, I think, what it is, next Friday. And we'll have another, part to that, hopefully the week following. So that's an update for you there, Hero. Hopefully they get you excited. I know it's a quick turnaround as pretty related to other times. So hopefully.
Sir, what's it about?
You asked if we could get some dialogue, right, from the Longhouse around the oral constitution, right, of the Ginyaga Haga.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, just you were talking about these laws or bylaws or code of conduct, instead of being written down and never practiced. It's good to get them actually be heard and practice them, I guess.
Yeah. There's something special there with the interaction between the folks who can recite those laws, but also the folks that are hearing them and giving their interpretations back and forth. And I think you'll see a little bit of that in the session coming up. But yeah, we usually leave the end here open for any things lingering on folks' minds. Thank you, Colin, for the time going through. I know what might be a lot of repetitive items for folks that have been joining us for some time, but I think we've been able to iterate on some of these things, and we eventually get to implementation and some nice updates in this repo for folks to follow and come in on. But yeah, I'll open the floor if there's anything on folks' minds, just general governance questions, ideas, contributions.
I'll try to talk about the advocates pivot issue. Julia had a question about like a description about it. So the advocates community or the advocates program was not ready to scale because of two things. Governance not being scalable enough, and this as you have seen is now more scalable and robust through the active issues and formal proposals process. And the second thing was the source grid algorithm ability to take in more data than it's taking right now, and that's also been resolved. So the issue I'm mentioning is that we could scale this up to, as Harold said, the whole thing is to try to define what the word community means, and for it to have an actual meaning than not something that is that you cannot understand, because if you could organize the community into some sort of communities that has some sort of a representation, and that representation can communicate their opinion, then you have a solid idea of what the word community means. So that I think is yeah, I think that's enough as a description.
Yeah, no, thank you kindly, Haas. And, I'm hearing some really exciting language from Longhouse too, connecting intrinsic motivations or traits to Turtle, Wolf, and Bear, right? And that's a connection we kind of made independently, hearing other language from the Longhouse. Now to hear it this direct, right, is exciting, right? Because it's really how it was a big part of our mapping, right? Is trying to attach these intrinsic traits or intrinsic motivations in the ecosystem to or knowing that's what the clan system does for us, right? And it allows it to be expressed in decision making, as Andre spoke to earlier, right? It's something that the CitiCoins folks are admirably trying to focus on themselves. So, but yeah, this is some nice context. Thank you, kindly, Haas. And for the folks interested, thank you kindly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we can leave the floor open if there's any other things lingering. Anything I missed in the chat as well, apologies. But thank you kindly for the time. I guess we can close off if there's nothing else for folks, or if we addressed everything on folks' minds. And I think I had some other things in my mind, but maybe slipping me now. But thank you kindly, y'all. I guess we can stop the recording, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.